And the thing is, like, there's always something that's scaring the people. They've got like unlimited.
Fear potential.
They got 100%. They got that much content potential right now. Like,
Yeah.
man, like I don't know. Like, there's climate change.
Yeah.
And look,
Yeah.
let me tell you something, Gigi. Let me tell you something. I'm not. I'm not like climate change is a hoax.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of getting to the point where I'm looking around. I'm going, I don't know if I think there's a bit of bullshit going on here.
You're very right, Jack. CO2 is plant food.
I know. Thank you. This is what I was telling my missus this yesterday.
Absolutely.
I was like, babe, listen, and she doesn't really understand what I'm telling her, but I'm like,
Yeah.
babe, plants eat CO2, then they
Yep.
give us oxygen.
That's it.
But
And they grow more. They grow more when they have more CO2.
Yeah.
So that's why we have the greening of the earth that's presently happening. I just put a blog on Brownstone Institute's website, so brownstone.org, about basically the things that are good that are happening in this world, because we need a little bit of, sunshine in our lives, right? And the things that the West has delivered that are really positive for human thriving. And so we talk about the things that are going well, and one of them is greening. The earth is greening.
Yeah.
The deserts are greening, right? And why is this happening? Because more CO2 in the air.
And they're also saying that exactly, because all these things that, like, fossil fuels, cars, this and that, factories,
it's releasing the carbon that was in wherever.
But
right,
the argument is, but here's the thing, because climate change activists, or whatever we want to call them, they don't exactly deny that.
Yeah.
They just say that, but there's too much CO2. And it's like a greenhouse effect, like.
Yeah, but okay, so if
the earth is getting too warm.
Yeah, sure. So if you look, I mean, I don't know. I've seen a lot of, I think very sensible analysis of this whole problem. And in my view, yes, people are subject to exactly the same patterns that we've been talking about in the climate area as in many other ones. They stop too short of really thinking everything through, right?
Yep.
So and what is the love thing? What is the altruism? The other regard, the thing that you're looking at that you love, that you want to protect is Mother Earth.
The planet.
And everybody loves Mother Earth.
Yes.
Can I just say, I love Mother Earth.
I
Do you
love
love Mother
it.
Earth?
I love it. I love this place.
Exactly. This is a wonderful place.
Yes,
we all love
it's beautiful.
it. We want to protect it, right?
Yep.
It's not like there's some, bunch of people around there who are like, let's kill the planet.
So
right?
it's a very similar mindset to the whole COVID thing.
Exactly.
Because it's like, you care about your loved ones. You care about the planet.
That's it.
You know what I mean?
It's exactly the same, right?
Shit.
So it's love for something outside yourself, usually, right? And you are urged to sacrifice for it. And if you love something, you'll sacrifice. This is what I said in my TEDx talk, right? And then if you don't sacrifice, you're accused of not loving that thing. So, either you don't love women, you don't love the earth, you don't love your grandparents, you don't love your kids, you don't love whatever, right? And you are so vulnerable to this, Jack, because we all love each other so much.
Yeah.
We love our gods, our countries, our children, our parents, our loved ones, our everybody. We are full of love. We love it. We live and breathe love every day.
They're weaponizing what we love against us.
It's exactly what's happening, right? And the only antidote to that is to remind yourself, manipulation happens, and this is what I advise everybody in my TEDx talk. Every time you're asked to make a sacrifice, ask yourself, will that sacrifice really help the thing that I love?
Yeah.
Will it really help? Will it really help women to basically label men in toto, in aggregate, on average, toxic sex predators? Is that a good thing? Is it really going to help the earth, which, by the way, is greening and greening and greening, to have less CO2 and, also, by the way, less human thriving? Because when you move away from clean and, dense and reasonably cheap energy, right? And by clean, I mean not like dung, right? So like dung is bad, right? You want to move up from that. But if you want to move to, something like, I don't know, wind farms, for example, you're killing birds, you're doing a lot of other stuff, right? And
wind farms kill birds?
Oh yeah.
Really?
And solar panels all across, the areas of land
this
that
is
would otherwise
this is
have
what I was going to say to you,
right?
because I feel like maybe in extreme cases, they're chopping down forests
to build wind farms,
to build fucking wind farms,
or solar panel farms.
I know, big solar
exactly.
grids.
So what is
it's
Earth?
Like, why are we killing the?
So what is good for Earth? Again, and people are just sucked into this because they just think, oh well, I want what's good for Earth, and green energy is just linked to Earth. I mean, just the word green makes it seem like it's linked to Earth's protection. It's friggin' not, man. It's not. Like, there is a place for some of this stuff. Like, I've got a family island in Canada where we use solar panels. It's off grid. It's awesome. The solar panels work great, and there's no problem with using solar. Like, a lot of applications.
I've got solar
it works.
panels on my house.
Yeah, exactly. And there's some applications, I think, for electric vehicles that are great as well, right? That make sense. But you got to use your brain and think, okay, when does it actually make sense? Does it really make sense to go to net zero by 2035 or whatever? Like, what are we talking about? We're talking about if you really wanted to make that happen, you would have, like, who are you going to kill? because it's really going to hold people back in their own progress, in their development, in their quality of life. And I tell you one thing we know about human protection of the earth, it happens more the richer the person is. So if you want to protect the earth, you want to get people out of poverty. That's what you want to do.
Yeah.
Number one job, right? And how do you get people out of poverty? Give them clean, dense fuel. And ideally not really bad, like, dung, like really dirty, because that's going to kill the kids with the wood-fired stoves and stuff, right? So you do want to, if possible, get to something like natural gas. Some coal burns pretty clean, right? And nuclear. Why are we not investigating the options with nuclear? A lot of other countries are. France has been on nuclear power for decades. Like, it's possible to do it. And so there's just this kind of blockage that you get to with people who have signed up to these narratives based on a slogan, based on a virtue that's written on the package, and they haven't really looked inside the package. And I tell you what, Jack, they're scared to do it because thinking is hard.
Yeah.
And thinking is risky because you might discover that you've been had.
Yeah.
And that is not a good feeling.
That's not good.
That's not a good feeling for people who want to feel good about themselves, right?
So they talk about, we need to protect the planet. We need to protect the planet. And then they chop down all our forests.
Exactly.
Like, that should probably be illegal.
Yeah. Yeah. You want to protect the forest,
Yeah,
right?
we want to be protected. Like, they're giving us oxygen. Have people done the simple maths here?
I know. Exactly.
The oxygen, okay, we need the forest.
And also, we talk about, people who are going to die because of the boiling planet, the extra temperature. Well, more people die of cold than of hot. Right? It's actually, if you look at like how many people are actually being affected in a lethal way by climate, the type of climate that's really bad for people is super cold, not the super hot. The super hot stuff, there are some people who die from that, but it's many more who die from the cold. So a few more degrees, even if that happened, right? It's not going to be the like more people are for sure going to die.
The thing is, the climate is always changing.
Of course. And if you look in history, the best we know, it's changed a lot, right?
It was
since, like even before people were around, like it was really going around a lot, right?
Yeah.
And like, the whole shallow ocean Earth and all these different kind of, different types of Earth that we've had have had completely different flora and fauna, and they've found different balances.
We adapt. The Earth
exactly.
adapts.
The Earth adapts. We adapt. This is what life is.
Yeah.
Life is adaptation.
Life will find a way.
Life will find a way. Thank
That's
you,
what
Jurassic
they say.
Park.
Yes.
Exactly. And it does, right?
It does find a way.
Absolutely, it finds a way. So all this, and it's so crippling, this kind of fear. And I think it's particularly bad for the kids, because the kids get exposed to this stuff in school. They get exposed. I remember my daughter coming home. Thank goodness she's not been sucked into this stuff, but she's 22 now. I think it might have been maybe 10 years ago. And she came home and she was obviously very anxious. And I was like, what's going on? And she said, I really hope that the earth doesn't, like boil by the time I get to be an adult. It's like, wow. I mean, man, that's child abuse. That is child abuse.
Yeah. Honestly, I'm scared what they're teaching us in schools right now.
Yep. It's very scary.
Let me bring this back to vaccines. Okay. Because there was something I want to talk to you about while we're here. So I'm about to become a father.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm going to be having a little girl in September. I cannot wait.
Oh, wow.
I'm so excited.
My daughter was born the 11th of September.
Oh, that's when my baby's due.
No way.
Swear to God.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And of course, the 11th of September.
9/11 babies. All right, let's go. All right, look. Here's the thing, right? So I'm very skeptical about what I'm going to be told my little girl has to have
the shots
jabbed in her.
Yeah.
Okay. And you get a bit conspiracy theorist with this. Well, look, we're both labeled crazy. Okay, we can just admit that. But look, I'm genuinely I'm a bit worried about a whole bunch of things.
Yep.
From vaccines, the type of society my little girl's going to be growing up in, what she's going to be told at school.
Yep.
I'm hearing right now there's some schools where they've got kitty litters.
Yeah, I know.
Kitty
for
litters.
the kids who want to be treated like cats, right?
Bro, put a fucking chain on them.
I know.
Send them outside. What is going on here? And I'm actually scared to send my kid to school. Right now, it seems like homeschooling is a better option.
Yep, I totally understand that. And
honestly,
in fact, so my daughter, the one who was born 11th of September, is just got engaged to be married.
Yep.
She's going to be married in Europe and in a castle, which is the campus of a new university that we're starting. And there's a huge bathtub in one of the bathrooms. And I said, hey, honey, you could have your baby in the bathtub. And we've talked about, okay, well, what are you going to do in terms of both the vaccines and the schooling and everything, and they're very keen to have kids, so I think it's going to happen soon.
Yep.
And honestly, what I think is that, I mean, from a just first principles scientific standpoint, I suspect there's probably a couple vaccines that on balance make sense.
Yep.
But I think probably the most of them in aggregate, just because of all of the extra stuff that's in them, right?
Yeah.
The adjuvants or whatever they call them, the aluminum and all that, aluminium as you guys say it. All that stuff relative to the benefit that you actually get.
Yeah.
I think that the harms are probably more. And again, if I go back to that cost benefit analysis, that's what economists do, right? On balance, is it a good idea or not? On net, is the quantum of benefits higher than the quantum of costs or risks in the case of a medical intervention? And I think probably for most, vaccines, you have to ask that question now, because we've seen,
and this is all I want.
The indemnity stuff and all of the
Yeah.
reasons why all sorts of regulations will have come through that weren't properly tested. And you have the benefit that you've got RFK in the US who has been working on this stuff for years and years, and I think you're going to see a lot more evidence coming down the track about whether or not certain things are actually worthwhile. And I do think probably some of them are, right?
So this is all I want for a lot of people, is just to start asking questions.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, like I saw something the other day. I was reading something that said 50 years ago, 1 in every 2,000 people had autism.
Yeah.
Today, 1 in 36.
Exactly.
And I know back then people were probably more diagnosed when it was severe autism. But like, all I'm saying is, when are we going to start asking questions?
Yep. No, it's absolutely right.
Because that's how I'm feeling. Like,
Yep.
And like, if there's already, the midwives and whatnot, they're asking my missus and myself, like, is she going to be vaccinated in this and that and that? And then you're saying no, and they look at us like we're crazy.
Yeah, of course.
Like they actually do.
I know, because they too have been just sold this line, and they haven't really done any research themselves.
Yeah.
If you ask people, have you done your own research about whether or not this vaccine is on balance good for your child? That's the scientific method, man. I'm sorry. That's the scientific method. That's what you should be doing.
That's all I care about. Is this going to be good for my child?
Is it going to be good for your child? Exactly. And that's all you should be caring about. That's what is appropriate in this situation. And we have trusted our health experts for a long time to do that research for us.
Yeah, but
it turns out that the health research is basically corrupted.
Yeah,
right?
100%. They're making money off of, like there's Johnson and Johnson's. Okay, now I know RFK is a bit of a cooker himself, but he said that sunscreen, Johnson and Johnson's is making cancer-causing sunscreen and then they're treating the cancer that they caused. Look, I don't know the truth in any of this, but like when you read shit like that, I'm just like, bro.
So I'll give you an example from COVID that's like that. So Merck, which was a big producer of ivermectin back in the beginning of COVID, actively suppressed any information about how ivermectin might be useful in COVID. Why? Because it was working on a vaccine, right? So wanted to be able to get more money from a profitable new product that was, still patented or whatever, rather than some repurposed drug that was off patent they couldn't get much money from. So that's the natural, sort of economic logic behind it. And that will be the case for so many different things. I mean, honestly, when I go out in the sun, I use zinc and coconut oil as a mix.
Yeah, I don't even wear sunscreen, honestly. Like, look,
I'll turn into a lobster if I don't wear anything, but if I wear just a little bit of zinc,
I'm the same. I'll go red.
Yeah.
But it's like, I believe that the sun can be bad. Obviously, I've been sunburnt before. I got a real bad sunburn before.
Me too.
Like,
as a kid,
start peeling and shit, like 100%.
Yeah.
And I think, look, I'm not that knowledgeable on it, but I'm sure too much sun will eventually cause skin cancer. But the sun's also good for you.
Sun's also good. And you need some. You need vitamin D, right?
Yeah.
And his best way to get it is to be in the sun
100%.
for, 15, 20 minutes a day.
Yeah.
So I run and, that's one of the things. I try to like not have too many things on my legs and arms because that's, you get sunlight that way. They have to supplement with vitamin D or whatever. And I think that, that high vitamin D stuff, I mean, that could be pushed out so much more for the COVID, narrative. And of course it wasn't, again, because it's an easy way to treat something or to prevent something that could otherwise be very, very profitable.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, I mean, on your little baby, I would be erring against vaccines at the moment, generally speaking, but there might be a couple that would be useful. And I would just say, look, you got to do your own research. Like rubella, maybe. I mean, there's a couple ones. We have a health scientist in Academia Libermentis, this new university I talked about. You'll put links in the description, I'm sure, of this, so people can look it up. We have a health scientist who's really deep into studying this stuff, and she's worked in pharma, directly inside the belly of pharma, and she's worked for governments that are approving drugs or not approving drugs for whole countries. She's worked for consulting firms, so she's seen the whole gamut. And she's not, she's not like an RFK type who's been working on vaccines for like 3 decades or whatever. But she's very sensible. She's a scientist, right? Yeah. So, and she's now kind of had her eyes open a bit by the whole COVID thing. And now she's kind of, been looking at, okay, which vaccines? And of course, there's like 72. I mean, there's a huge number to look at, right? And figure out, okay, on balance, in collection with everything else as well, remembering that every little bit you're getting this, kind of accumulation of stuff that gets injected.
Yeah, see, there's so many vaccines nowadays.
Yeah.
Like I'm also a stepfather already. Okay.
Oh, wow.
Now my partner has only had something like 6 or something. But she told me the other week, like her eldest daughter has got like 20 something vaccines.
Because it came in sort of more in the, I don't know, 80s, 90s.
Yeah. And I'm just like, that's fucked up.
It's a lot.
That's fucked
up. And if you look at like, what
no one's researching this shit. No one's researching.
No, of course not, because there's no money in it. There's no money in it. But if you look at human longevity, right? Again, what you care about, what I care about is, human lives, the quality of lives, length of lives, number of lives, right?
100%.
So if you look at what actually in human history started to tick that stuff up, it was something that happened in the middle of the 1800s. And what that was, my best guess, and with my co-authors as well, is that it was basically a discovery of sanitation. Like the value of clean water, clean air, clean food, good quality inputs essentially, and not having huge loads of viruses, bacteria, whatever else. So there was a UK law, like a sanitation law, 1848, which essentially public health law, which essentially started to clean stuff up in the cities. And that's when you started seeing human longevity tick up. Right. For the babies, of course, the human, infant mortality went down, and also people were just living longer, and even when they got to adulthood.
So after this discovery had kind of been made, then
it sort of disseminated out, and people started, as sewers were, erected in various different cities, you start to see the death rate come down, and of course, there's
people
infectious
started
agents.
Living longer. People started getting sick less
because their immune systems are stronger, because they're not constantly having to fight off so much bacterial load, so much viral load, whatever. And of course, that matters, right? The bacteria and the virus, they do contribute to disease, I think. I mean, that's my best guess, the germ theory of disease. But it's the terrain theory is the other theory, which is basically if you are strong, if the terrain on which the bugs, are attacking is strong, you'll be more likely to repel the bugs. So both of those things are operating at the same time, right? So you want to have a strong system as much as possible, but you also want to have not too much load of the bacterial organisms. So the sanitation systems that were put in place essentially focused on reducing the load of these various kind of pathogens, and also giving good water, good food, nutritious food to people to build up their immune system. Yeah. And so then, and there were a few other things that happened. Like there was, a lot of milk that came out in the early 1900s, which seems to have, really seriously brought down, some infectious diseases amongst children, and other things that happened. But there was way before the vaccine era, right? Yeah. The vaccine era comes, and I mean,
when did vaccines first become?
Well, I mean, middle of the 1900s is when you started seeing some things like for polio, for example, and, and smallpox as well. And then, more and more and more in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. I mean, varicella vaccine, I think, came out in the 90s. That was, my kids had that, right? That was the anti-chickenpox vaccine. And one of them was protected and the other one wasn't, actually, funnily enough. So in childhood later on, I got shingles, which is the same bug, right? And my daughter still got chickenpox from me.
Yeah, right.
Funnily enough, but my son didn't. So, anyway, but so if you look at the actual timelines, again, taking a scientific approach, right? It's not taking a cuckoo approach, not taking some kind of crazy ideological approach. I just want to know, dude, like, are these things actually on balance a good idea for human health, right? That's all I want to know.
That's all I want to know.
And you need to be able to, you just need to look at the data and do your best guess. And sometimes it's really hard because you don't have the counterfactual, which is like, what longevity would we have seen if we hadn't had the vaccines, right? So you have to try to make an educated guess about what that would have been like. You have to maybe go to some countries that didn't have as much, or staggered entry of vaccines.
It's not even hard to study. I mean, like it's too hard to study good data. That's the thing, because I don't even know if the data that I'm reading is.
It's hard for the person on the street.
True.
Like if you haven't had scientific training, it is bloody difficult to make your way through a scientific article and pick the mistakes. In fact, I've got a cousin in the US who's a nurse. And we have crossed swords over COVID. Let's just say that. And, early on when the vaccines came out, she sent a mail to the whole family saying the mRNA vaccines are completely safe. And I was like, I don't
Says
think so.
who?
I've seen the animal studies. This doesn't look good, right?
Yeah.
And so she was like, oh, let me send you some articles. So she sent me a couple articles. They were just basically gobbledygook. I mean, I could see there were so many mistakes in these articles and so many ways in which, sleights of hand, basically, that the authors were using to try to, delude people into thinking that, yeah, this was all good, hunky dory.
Yeah.
And I just said, I just don't buy this. And she would just be like, well, this is peer reviewed literature. It's peer reviewed literature. Therefore, it is absolutely right. And I was like, sorry, do you realize the corruption in science today?
Yeah.
Like, she doesn't, right? And of course, and she's a smart girl. Like, she's a smart lady. She's, a nurse. She's got a master's degree in public health or something, right? She's, she's not a Dumbo. So for her to be, misled, I mean, everybody else on the street, good luck.
That's
right?
that's the problem. Like the people that are telling us false information, they're often such seemingly trusted people.
Exactly.
Like,
I
you know what I mean?
I know.
So
I know, but there are also, I mean, honestly, if you look at the ranks of the what I would call, I guess, resistance or restoration movement or whatever, restoration of sanity movement, there are a lot of people who are well credentialed, who are smart, who are, esteemed people. They were esteemed before COVID. John Ioannidis, for example, in Stanford. Jay Bhattacharya, Stanford. He's an MD and a PhD in economics. Martin Kulldorff at Harvard, right? Sunetra Gupta at Oxford, right? There are people all over who are actually very esteemed and renowned who did not go along, at least with all of the stuff that we were, told to do. And yet people sort of just discounted them. So part of what has to happen is kind of a recognition. Okay, there's been this suppression of genuinely learned voices, genuinely, learned, elder, experienced people. Peter McCulloch, right, who know what they're doing. He's probably the best published cardiologist, I don't know, in the U.S., maybe in, I don't know, certainly in his state and his area. And yet he just basically doesn't, get the mainstream very much. I mean, he's been to Congress a few times, but he just works. I mean, that guy works like a dog. He's sleeping like 4 hours a night, and he's just committed to his cause, which is got to get, reasonable, sane truth out to people, right? And just open their eyes to what's happening, and not sell them on an ideology, and not try to pit them against, big pharma for the sake of that. We need pharmaceutical companies to keep making drugs for us. Like, sure, Western medicine has given us a few things. Like, I would like to have antibiotics if I get septic. Thank you very much, right? Is though you don't throw out the baby with the bathwater, but neither do you just blind yourself to the realities of power. And the realities of super, super, super profitable, drugs and medicines and systems of favor exchange, because that's just stupid. If you blind yourself to that, you can't see what's happening, and you will be taken down the garden path, and your health will be taken from you, and your wealth, and your joy. And I'm not willing for that to happen. So you have to stand up against that stuff.
if these medicinal companies really cared about people not getting sick, they'd be broke.
Indeed.
Like, how are they going to
Indeed.
make their money?
Indeed. This is a big problem. This is actually a huge part of the problem, because you got to somehow figure out, what are you going to do with all these people who've been working in the pharmaceutical companies? What are you going to do with them? If you structure a new society where you've got, a new system of health, basically, right? And you basically say, look, I don't want 80% of what I'm being sold right at the moment, right? Take 80% of what the TGA approves or is on the PBS and throw it in the ocean, right? I don't want that. I want aspirin. I want basic antibiotics. I want ivermectin, right? I want a few basic things. And basically the rest of it is just Me Too nonsense. And you can probably address a lot of it with just nutrition and sleep and good health functioning communities, then you're going to have all these people who are out of a job, right? And they know it. And that's why they don't want this idea, right?
100%.
So what are you going to do with them? So then you have to think, okay, creatively, you need to give them a job. Well, they could work maybe, retrain in nutritional medicine, right? Or in kind of, maybe go overseas and study what some particular culture has in their medicine, like what's the Aboriginal culture tell you about how to treat, a virus or whatever, right? And somehow do something in health. But you've got to allow for the grandfathering out of these people, because otherwise you just got a whole bunch of unemployment and a whole bunch of people who are absolutely broken psychologically, by the way, if they realize what's been going on. And that's going to be another huge social problem, right?
Yeah.
So you have to take care of people, including those people who have been captured by this stuff and even have been making their money out of it, right? They are still people. They are still people. And if you're serious about a peaceful transition into a better society, you've got to have a grandfathering plan. So that's, again, something I'm working on, because that, we're going to need it at some point if we don't want to have bloodshed.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Oh,
I mean,
man.
have you taken the temperature in Europe recently? I mean, it's hotting up over there. Like I would not be surprised that for us to see more violence in the West, a lot more violence before this stuff starts getting better.